The Galactic Council's Hall of Eternal Glory was, in Jake Murphy's professional opinion, a pain in the ass to clean. The vaulted chamber stretched 300 feet overhead, its walls carved from crystallized starlight that some pretentious alien architect had decided should refract every wavelength known to science. The result was a disco ball from hell that made Jake's hangover throb in sync with the pulsing rainbow patterns. Worse, the crystal showed every fingerprint, every smudge, every microscopic particle of space dust that drifted through the ventilation system. And right in the center of it all, mounted on a floating platform of pure concentrated worthiness, which Jake suspected was just fancy anti-grav tech, stood the champion's spear. Jake had seen it 100 times on his cleaning rounds. It was about 7 feet long, made of some metal that shifted between silver and gold depending on the angle, covered in glowing runes that supposedly told the story of its 10,000-year history. The whole setup was surrounded by an energy field that kept regular schlubs like him from getting too close, with velvet ropes for extra emphasis that someone very important didn't want people touching things. Today, however, the energy field was down for maintenance. "Murphy!" His supervisor's voice crackled through his earpiece. "You're assigned to display case maintenance, Tribunal Chamber 3. The council's got some big ceremony tonight, so everything needs to shine." Jake groaned, pushing his cleaning cart down the crystalline hallway. "That's the room with the fancy spear, right?" "The champion's spear of infinite glory," his supervisor corrected, in the tone of someone who'd been forced to sit through the orientation video. "Show some respect. That artifact predates most known civilizations. Warriors from 1,000 worlds have attempted to prove their worth by— Yeah, chosen one stuff. Got it." Jake switched off his earpiece before the lecture could continue. He'd heard enough about prophecies and ancient traditions in his 6 months working for the Galactic Council Facilities Management Department. Every species had some legendary artifact or cosmic destiny they wouldn't shut up about. He shouldered open the door to Tribunal Chamber 3 and immediately regretted not bringing sunglasses. The spear's platform had been lowered to floor level for cleaning, and without the energy field, the thing was bright enough to see from orbit. The runes pulsed with a steady rhythm, like a very slow heartbeat. "Right," Jake muttered, pulling out his cleaning supplies. "Let's get this over with." The first rule of cleaning priceless alien artifacts was, don't touch the priceless alien artifact. Jake had learned this rule the hard way when he'd accidentally activated a Zorgellian meditation sphere and sent half the diplomatic wing into a transcendent trance for 3 hours. His supervisor had made it very clear that one more incident would result in him cleaning waste reclamation for the rest of his contract. So, Jake was careful. He sprayed the platform, wiped down the base, cleaned the ceremonial inscriptions that ringed the display area. The spear itself he planned to leave alone entirely, maybe just hit it with the duster from a safe distance. He was reaching up to dust the mounting brackets when his cart decided to assert its independence by rolling backward. Jake lunged to catch it, overbalanced, and slapped his hand against the spear's shaft to steady himself. The spear vibrated. It was a deep, resonant hum that Jake felt in his bones, like someone had struck a tuning fork the size of a building. The runes flared from a gentle pulse to a blazing brilliance, and for just a moment, one impossible moment, Jake felt something. A sensation like recognition, like coming home after a long trip, like the universe itself had just said, "Oh, there you are!" Then it stopped. The spear went back to its normal pulsing glow. Jake yanked his hand away like he'd touched a hot stove. "Shit," he whispered. "Shit, shit, shit." He looked around frantically. No alarms were blaring. No security teams were storming in. The spear just sat there, looking exactly like it had before, completely inert and innocent. Maybe nobody had noticed. Maybe it was just a glitch, some weird maintenance hiccup from the energy field being down. Maybe he could finish cleaning and get out of here before— "What have you done?" Jake jumped so hard he nearly knocked over his cart. Ambassador Krellian burst through the doorway, his feathered crest standing fully erect in alarm. The avian diplomat's 3 eyes were wide, with something between terror and ecstasy, and his wings were spread wide enough to block most of the light from the hallway. "I didn't do anything," Jake protested, holding up his cleaning spray like a shield. I was just dusting, and the cart moved, and I— The spear! Krelian rushed past him, circling the display platform. It activated. After 10 millennia of silence, the champion's spear has responded to a touch. It barely did anything, Jake argued. Just a little buzz. Probably needs new batteries or something. Krelian's head swiveled toward him with disturbing speed. Batteries? Batteries? His translator struggled to convey the depths of his horror. This is the most sacred artifact in 17 star systems. It was forged in the heart of a dying star by the first champions. It has judged countless warriors across 10,000 years and found them all wanting. And you speak of batteries? Look, man, I'm just trying to do my job. But Krelian was already speaking frantically into his communicator. His words, a rapid stream of high counselish that Jake's translator couldn't keep up with. He caught words like prophecy and awakening and chosen one, none of which sounded good for his chances of getting his deposit back on his apartment. Within minutes, Tribunal Chamber 3 was packed with alien dignitaries, all talking over each other in a cacophony of different languages and emotional displays. Jake backed himself into a corner, still holding his cleaning spray, and tried to figure out how this had become his problem. Order! Order! General Thumak's voice boomed across the chamber like a foghorn. The massive rhinoceros-shaped alien stood on his hind legs, his armored hide scarred from countless battles, his expression suggesting that he'd rather be fighting those battles right now than dealing with this circus. The crowd of diplomats slowly quieted, though Jake could still hear excited whispers rippling through the assembly. He counted at least 40 different species packed into the viewing area, all staring at either the spear or him, with varying degrees of awe, skepticism, and confusion. Ambassador Krelian, Thumak growled. Explain what happened here, clearly. Krelian fluttered to the center of the room, his feathers still puffed up with excitement. General, I witnessed it with my own 3 eyes. This human, he gestured dramatically at Jake, touched the champion's spear, and it responded. It vibrated, the runes flared. After 10,000 years of silence, the spear has chosen. A collective gasp ran through the assembly. Jake raised his hand weakly. Can I just say that I was trying to do my job and— The human speaks. A jellyfish-like creature floated forward, her translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. High Priestess Velena, according to the name tag, hovering beside her. Tell us, mortal, what did you feel when you touched the sacred artifact? Jake blinked. Vibrations? Vibrations, Velena repeated, her voice filled with mystical significance. Yes, the cosmic resonance, the harmonic convergence of destiny and soul. The spear recognizes its master. I'm not trying to be anyone's master, Jake protested. I'm in maintenance, I clean things, that's it. Preposterous, Thumak snorted. He lumbered toward the spear, his massive form making the platform shake. The human probably triggered some malfunction. Let me test this supposed awakening. The general reached out one massive 3-fingered hand and gripped the spear's shaft. His muscles bulged, his jaw set in determination. Energy crackled around his armored hide as he channeled what Jake assumed was warrior spirit or battle aura or whatever. Nothing happened. Thumak's eyes narrowed. He gripped harder. Still nothing. With a grunt of frustration, he released the spear and stepped back. Malfunctioning, as I suspected. Destiny cannot malfunction, Krelian screeched. Perhaps your warrior's spirit has dimmed with age, General. My spirit could bench press your entire species, Ambassador. Please, Velena interrupted, floating between them. We must not quarrel in the presence of the awakened artifact. Let others attempt to touch it. We must verify that only the Chosen One can activate its power. Over the next hour, Jake watched with growing discomfort as a parade of alien dignitaries touched the spear, warriors in gleaming armor. Mystics who chanted and meditated. Scientists who approached it with scanning equipment and earnest theories. A prince of some crystalline species who claimed 17 different bloodlines of worthiness. The spear sat there like a very expensive paperweight. This is ridiculous, Thumak finally declared. The artifact is clearly— Wait, Krelian interrupted. Make the human touch it again. All eyes turned to Jake. He shook his head. No way, I'm not touching that thing again. Do you know how many workplace safety protocols I've already violated? Touch it, Velena commanded, her tone brooking no argument. I really don't think— Touch it! Fine! Jesus. Jake stepped forward, acutely aware of 40 different species watching his every move. He reached out slowly, his hand hovering an inch from the spear's surface. Maybe it had been a fluke. Maybe nothing would happen this time, and he could go back to his nice, simple life of cleaning floors and not being the center of galactic attention. His finger brushed the metal. The spear sang. It was the same vibration as before, but stronger, clearer. The runes blazed like miniature suns. The entire platform trembled, and Jake swore he could hear something. Not words exactly, but a feeling, a sense of greeting, of recognition. The spear felt warm under his touch, almost alive, and for a moment it seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat. Then he pulled his hand away and it stopped. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Holy shit, Jake whispered. The prophecy, Krelian breathed. It's true. The champion has returned. I'm not a champion, Jake protested. I'm barely a functional adult. I got fired from my last 3 jobs. I eat cereal for dinner. I haven't been to the gym in 2 years. And yet, Velena said softly, her bioluminescence shifting to thoughtful purples and blues. The spear has chosen you. The universe does not make mistakes. The universe made the platypus, Jake shot back. The universe makes mistakes all the time. Thumak stepped forward, his expression grave. Human, what is your name? Jake. Jake Murphy. Jake Murphy, the general repeated, as if testing how the name felt. Whether you wish it or not, you have become part of something larger than yourself. The champion's spear has not activated in 10,000 years. Its awakening signals. A malfunction, Jake interrupted. It signals a malfunction. You guys should call tech support. There is no tech support for Destiny, Krelian said primly. There's tech support for everything. That's literally my job description. But nobody was listening. The assembly had erupted into excited chatter again, different factions already arguing about what this meant, what should be done, whether prophecies could be trusted, whether humans were even legally allowed to be chosen ones under current galactic law. Jake tried to back toward the door, but 2 security guards, massive centipede-like aliens in ceremonial armor, blocked his way. He was trapped. Great, he muttered, slumping against the wall. Just great! On the platform, the champion's spear pulsed softly, as if satisfied with itself. Jake was starting to think the spear had a sick sense of humor. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber was somehow even more pretentious than the Hall of Eternal Glory. The ceiling displayed a real-time map of the entire galaxy, with important systems highlighted in throbbing colors. The walls were lined with seats arranged in a circular amphitheater, each position marked with the sigil of a member species. At the center, on what Jake was pretty sure was just a really expensive interrogation chair, sat Jake himself. This is kidnapping, Jake said for the 14th time. You can't just detain me because I accidentally touched your space spear. We prefer to think of it as protective custody, Krelian said smoothly. He stood at a podium, his feathers perfectly groomed now, looking every inch the confident bureaucrat. For your own safety, of course. Word has already spread across 17 systems that the champion's spear has awakened. There are parties who might wish to claim the spear for themselves. Great! So now I'm in danger because of your magic toothpick. It is not a toothpick. Krelian's crest flared. It is the single most important artifact in recorded galactic history. Show some respect. I'll show respect when someone shows me a paycheck. I've been here for 6 hours. I'm missing my shift. My supervisor is going to kill me. Your supervisor has been informed that you have been reassigned, Velena said, floating serenely at her position in the circle, to more significant duties. I like my insignificant duties. They pay rent. Thumak cleared his throat, a sound like boulders grinding together. Perhaps we should explain why this matters, human. You deserve that much, at least. Finally, someone being reasonable. Jake nodded. Okay, I'm listening. The general gestured, and the galaxy display above them shifted to show a different scene. It was a recording, Jake realized, thousands of years old based on the degraded quality. The image showed a battle, cosmic and terrible. Vast entities of shadow fought against beings of pure light, while entire stars exploded in the background. 10,000 years ago, Thumak began, the galaxy faced extinction. The void entities emerged from spaces between realities, consuming everything they touched. Civilizations fell. Entire species vanished. It was a darkness that could not be reasoned with, could not be stopped by conventional means. The image shifted to show a council not unlike this one, but the faces were different. Ancient species, some long extinct. In their midst stood a group of warriors, each wielding weapons that glowed with the same light Jake had seen from the spear. The first champions were chosen from among the greatest warriors of their age, Velena continued. Each was tested by their weapon, found worthy by cosmic forces beyond our understanding. They were given power to fight what could not be fought. The recording showed the champions in battle, their weapons blazing. The spear was there, wielded by a being that looked like living crystal, its movements too fast and fluid to follow clearly. They won, Thumak said, at great cost. Most of the champions fell, but they sealed the void entities away, and the weapons were left behind as guardians, as warnings, as tests for future generations. The image faded. The galaxy map returned. For 10,000 years, Krelian said softly, countless warriors have attempted to claim these weapons. The blade of ending skies, the shield of perpetual dawn, the champion's spear. All have remained dormant, waiting for those worthy enough to wield them against the darkness. Until you, Velena said, her light pulsing toward Jake. Until today. Jake sat in silence for a moment, processing this. Then, so you're telling me that Super Spear is supposed to fight space demons, and it picked me. A guy who got fired from Best Buy for showing up late too many times to be its champion. The prophecy is quite specific, Krelian said, pulling up a holographic text. The writing was in a language Jake couldn't read, but his translator kicked in, rendering it in floating English letters. In the age of forgetting, when the guardians sleep and pride blinds the worthy, the champion shall arise from smallness. Neither noble nor mighty, neither wise nor proud. One who walks unnoticed shall take up the spear, and in their hands shall destiny be forged anew. Jake read it twice, then a third time. That's the vaguest prophecy I've ever heard. That could be anyone. It could be, Velena agreed. But the spear chose you. That is not vague. That is fact. Okay, but look at me. Jake gestured at himself, his stained maintenance uniform, his scuffed boots, his general everything. Do I look like champion material? I have student loans. I haven't had a date in 8 months. I once got stuck in a revolving door for 20 minutes because I couldn't figure out the timing. I'm the opposite of special. Perhaps that is precisely why you were chosen, Velena suggested. Or, Thumak interjected, his tone suggesting he was firmly in the skeptical camp. The spear is malfunctioning and we're all wasting time on prophecy nonsense instead of getting it properly serviced. The spear cannot malfunction, Krelion protested. Everything can malfunction, Ambassador. I've seen gods malfunction. I once watched a living sun forget how to shine. Nothing in this universe is foolproof. Guys, Jake interrupted, can we maybe run some tests or something? Figure out what's actually going on here before we start planning my cosmic destiny? That, at least, they could agree on. The next 4 hours were the most uncomfortable of Jake's life, which was saying something given his history of bad decisions. Teams of scientists from a dozen different species ran every scan, test, and analysis they could think of. They measured his brain activity, his genetic structure, his quantum signature, his midi-chlorian count, which Jake was 90% sure was a Star Wars reference and not a real thing. The results were unanimous. Jake Murphy was aggressively, comprehensively, almost impressively average. Bone density, median for human species, one scientist reported. Neural activity, within standard parameters, another added. Physical fitness, below average but not significantly so. Genetic markers, nothing unusual. Some lactose intolerance, slightly elevated risk for male pattern baldness. Hey, Jake protested weakly, Psychic potential, essentially 0. Magical affinity, none detected. Chosen one probability index, statistically improbable. The lead scientist, a floating brain in a jar named Dr. Xylophus, summarized, "By every measurable metric, this human is completely unremarkable. There is nothing, absolutely nothing, that would explain the spear's response to him." "Thank you," Jake said. "See, I'm nobody special. This is clearly a technical problem." "And yet," Dr. Xylophus continued, floating toward the spear where it now sat in a secure testing chamber, "when Subject Murphy touches the artifact, the response is immediate and consistent. We've tried replicating the conditions with other test subjects. We've tried other humans. We've tried subjects with similar genetic markers, similar quantum signatures, similar neurological patterns. Nothing. Only Murphy triggers the activation." "Because it's broken," Thumac insisted. "Because it's destiny," Krelian countered. "Because the universe has a sense of humor," Velena suggested, her lights pulsing in what Jake was learning to recognize as her version of amusement. Jake slumped in his chair. "So what now? You guys going to keep me here forever, running tests?" The three aliens exchanged glances. "Actually," Krelian said slowly, "there is one more test. The traditional one." "I don't like the way you said that," Jake said immediately. "The Trials of Champions," Velena intoned. 3 tests to prove worthiness. Combat, wisdom, and courage. They have been performed for every warrior who claimed a right to the ancient weapons. "I'm not claiming any rights. I don't want the spear." "Nevertheless," Thumac said, and Jake thought he detected a hint of satisfaction in the general's voice, "it would settle the question definitively. If you pass the trials, the prophecy is fulfilled. If you fail, as I suspect you will, we can conclusively prove the spear is malfunctioning and proceed with proper maintenance. And if I refuse, then you remain here," Krelian said simply, "in protective custody until we determine what to do with you. The spear has awakened. That cannot be undone. You are part of this now, Jake Murphy, whether you wish it or not." Jake looked around the chamber, at the ancient aliens and their ancient prophecies, at the floating brain scientist and his incomprehensible data, at the magical spear that apparently thought he was special, despite all evidence to the contrary. "Fine," he said finally. "I'll do your stupid trials, but when I fail spectacularly, and I will, you're all going to feel really silly about this whole thing." "That," Thumac said, "is the first reasonable thing you've said all day." Velena's lights pulsed in her mysterious way. "The trials begin tomorrow. Rest well, champion." "I'm not a champion," Jake muttered. But nobody was listening anymore. In its testing chamber, the champion's spear pulsed softly, as if laughing. Jake's quarters, which the council insisted on calling his champion is chambers, despite his protests, were nicer than any apartment he'd ever lived in. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the galactic core. A bed that automatically adjusted to his body's contours. A bathroom with 14 different shower settings, including one labeled Motivation Blast that he was too afraid to try. He couldn't enjoy any of it. Tomorrow he was supposed to compete against actual warriors in trials that were probably designed to kill him. The door chimed. Jake considered pretending to be asleep, but his visitor simply walked in anyway. Ambassador Krelion strutted into the room, followed by a floating cart loaded with equipment. "Your training begins now," the ambassador announced. "It's midnight. Champions do not observe arbitrary time conventions." "Champions also probably sleep more than 4 hours a night," Jake grumbled, but he dragged himself out of the impossibly comfortable bed. "What is all this stuff?" "Your equipment for tomorrow's trials." Krelion gestured, and the cart unpacked itself with mechanical precision. Armor pieces arranged themselves on a mannequin, weapons floated into display racks. A helmet that looked like it cost more than Jake's entire student loan debt settled onto a pedestal. "I don't know how to use any of this," Jake said flatly. "That," Krelion admitted, "is a problem. Traditionally, champions train for years before attempting the trials. You have..." He checked a display on his wrist device. "Approximately 8 hours." "Great, so I'm definitely going to die." "Not necessarily." A new voice came from the doorway, General Thumak ducked into the room, his massive frame barely fitting through the entrance. I may disagree with this prophecy nonsense, but I'm not going to let an untrained warrior enter the trials unprepared. That would be dishonorable. You're going to train me? Jake asked skeptically. Didn't you just say I was going to fail? Oh, you're absolutely going to fail, Thumak agreed cheerfully. But you'll fail with proper technique. Come, we have work to do. The next 6 hours were a crash course in not dying immediately. Young Thumak ran Jake through basic combat stances, showed him how to hold the spear without dropping it, and taught him exactly 3 defensive moves. 3! Jake panted, drenched in sweat. That's all! You can barely manage 3, Thumak pointed out. Your species' physical capabilities are limited. We made it to space, Jake protested, by building machines to compensate for your inadequacy. Very clever, actually, but that won't help you in the arena tomorrow. The general demonstrated a blocking technique for the dozenth time. Again, and this time, try not to stab yourself. By dawn, Jake could hold the spear without it slipping from his grip. He could execute 1 decent thrust and 2 mediocre blocks. He could put on the armor without Krellion's help, though it took him 15 minutes, and he was pretty sure he'd fastened something backwards. This is hopeless, Jake said, staring at his reflection. He looked ridiculous, a maintenance worker playing dress-up in equipment meant for actual heroes. Perhaps, Velena said, appearing in the doorway with her usual mysterious timing. But consider this. The spear chose you as you are, not as a warrior, not as a hero, simply as yourself. Perhaps that is enough. It's really not, Jake said. We shall see. The arena was packed. News of the champion's trial had spread across the galactic network overnight, and apparently everyone wanted to watch either Jake's triumphant fulfillment of prophecy or his spectacular failure. Based on the betting odds being displayed on floating screens, most of the smart money was on spectacular failure. Jake stood in the preparation chamber, the champion's spear in his hands. It vibrated softly, reassuringly, like it was trying to tell him everything would be okay. You're a liar, Jake told the spear. We're both going to die today. The spear pulsed brighter. Jake chose to interpret that as disagreement rather than amusement. The chamber opened. Jake walked into the arena to thunderous noise, cheering, jeering, and several sounds his translator couldn't quite categorize. The arena itself was massive, easily 3 football fields across, with seating for thousands rising up in steep tiers. Holographic displays floated everywhere, showing his face to the crowd in uncomfortably high definition. 5 other competitors stood in the arena. These were the warriors, who had petitioned for the right to attempt the trials alongside him. Each one convinced they could prove their worthiness, if given another chance. Blademaster Zorax was a nightmare made of sharp edges and armor. His species looked like they'd evolved from predatory cats, crossed with razor wire, and the 4 swords strapped to his back gleamed with what Jake sincerely hoped wasn't dried blood. Captain Steelheart was literally made of living metal, her body a sculpture of chrome perfection. She moved with the precision of a machine and the grace of a dancer, and her presence made the air hum with electromagnetic energy. Then there was Thunderfist, a geological alien who was basically a walking mountain. Swiftblade, whose name was probably truth in advertising based on how fast she could move, and Lord Valendris, some kind of space elf who looked like he'd stepped out of a romance novel and radiated smug superiority. Greetings, false champion, Zorax purred, his voice like knives on a whetstone. I look forward to exposing your unworthiness. Cool, Jake said. I look forward to not dying. The arena fell silent. Velena floated to the center, her form projected to massive size on every screen. Welcome, warriors, to the Trials of Champions, she intoned. 3 tests await you: combat, wisdom, and courage. Only those who prove themselves worthy may claim the right to bear the ancient weapons. The first trial begins now. The arena floor split open. Platforms rose from below, creating a 3-dimensional battlefield of floating stones and energy bridges. And from somewhere beneath the arena came a roar that made Jake's teeth rattle. Oh, good, he muttered. There's a monster. Of course there's a monster. The creature that emerged was like someone had combined a dragon, a gorilla, and a tank, then decided it wasn't scary enough and added laser eyes. It roared again, and Jake watched in real time as his life expectancy dropped to approximately 30 seconds. The other warriors charged forward with battle cries and dramatic flourishes. Zorax's 4 swords sang as he leapt between platforms, Captain Steelheart's body reconfigured into weapon forms Jake couldn't even name. Thunderfist simply punched a platform so hard it exploded. Jake did what any sensible person would do. He ran in the opposite direction. "The false champion flees!" someone in the crowd shouted. The betting odds updated in real time, and Jake watched his already terrible chances get even worse. The monster, apparently called a Gravicorn, according to the helpful arena display, focused its attention on the warriors actively attacking it. It swiped at Zorax, who dodged with insulting ease. It fired its laser eyes at Captain Steelheart, whose metal body simply reflected the beams. It tried to eat Thunderfist, and apparently regretted it immediately based on its pained roar. Jake, meanwhile, found himself on a floating platform at the edge of the arena, trying to figure out how to survive the next 5 minutes. The champion's spear vibrated in his hands, harder than before, insistent. "What?" Jake hissed at it. "You want me to fight that thing? I can barely fight a parking ticket." The spear pulsed. Jake felt something, not words, not quite, more like an impression, a sense of timing, of opportunity. The same feeling he got when he was working on a stubborn piece of machinery and suddenly knew exactly which bolt to loosen, which wire to jiggle. The Gravicorn had all 5 warriors engaged now, and despite their impressive abilities, the creature was holding its own. It was big, angry, and apparently designed to survive anything short of a nuclear blast. But watching it move, Jake noticed something, a pattern. Every 3rd attack it reared back to roar, and when it roared, there was a split second where its throat was exposed, where the armored scales didn't quite meet. "That's a weak spot," Jake muttered. "That's a video game boss weak spot." The spear vibrated eagerly. "You want me to hit it there, during that 1-second window, while it's surrounded by 5 warriors who can actually fight? Are you insane?" The spear's response was clearly affirmative. "I hate everything about this," Jake said, but he was already moving, jumping between platforms with considerably less grace than the other warriors. He mistimed one jump and barely caught himself. Another platform crumbled under his weight. The crowd's laughter followed him across the arena. The Gravicorn reared back. Jake counted. 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3! He didn't think, didn't plan, just jumped, spear raised, his untrained arms swinging with all the technique of a Little League player. The champion's spear did the rest. It blazed with light as it left Jake's hands, transforming from a simple thrust into a streak of pure energy. It hit the Gravicorn's throat perfectly, burying itself to the hilt in the weak spot Jake had noticed. The creature froze. Its eyes went wide. Then it toppled, hitting the arena floor with an earth-shaking crash. Silence. Total. Absolute silence. The champion's spear pulled itself from the dead Gravicorn and flew back to Jake's hands, like it had always belonged there. It vibrated with what Jake could only describe as satisfaction. "Trial 1, Velena announced, her voice breaking the stunned quiet. "Complete. Winner, Jake Murphy." The crowd erupted, half in celebration, half in protest, all in chaos. Jake stood there, his arms shaking from adrenaline, pretty sure he was going to throw up. "That was luck," Zorax snarled, stalking toward him. "Blind, stupid luck." "Yeah," Jake agreed readily. "Absolutely. 0 skill involved." That somehow made Zorax even angrier. The second trial was, somehow, worse than the first. They'd moved to a different arena, this one more like a classroom crossed with a meditation chamber. 7 podiums stood in a circle, each one occupied by a warrior. In the center floated a crystalline sphere that apparently contained the great questions of the universe. Jake already hated it. "The trial of wisdom," Velena announced, "tests not the body, but the mind and spirit. Each warrior will face a question drawn from the collective knowledge of 1,000 civilizations. Answer truthfully, answer wisely, and prove your worth." Lord Valendris went first. His question involved complex metaphysics and the nature of reality. His answer was a 10-minute philosophical dissertation that made half the audience nod sagely and the other half fall asleep. The sphere glowed green, a pass. Swiftblade received a question about leadership and war. Her answer was concise, practical, and earned another green glow. Captain Steelheart discussed the relationship between consciousness and existence in perfect, logical syntax. Green. Jake's turn came. The sphere floated toward him, pulsing with ancient light. A voice emerged, not speaking exactly, but somehow transmitting meaning directly into his mind. What is the true purpose of power? Jake blinked. That was vague. Deliberately, frustratingly vague. He could see the other warriors watching him, waiting for him to fail. The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. The champion's spear vibrated softly in his grip. But this time, it offered no help. This wasn't something it could answer for him. I don't know, Jake said finally. The crowd murmured. That was not the beginning of a philosophical answer. That was just giving up. But I can tell you what I think, he continued. I think power isn't supposed to have a purpose. It's a tool, right? Like a hammer or a car. The purpose comes from the person using it. You can use a hammer to build a house or crack someone's skull. Same hammer, different purposes. The sphere pulsed, but didn't change color yet. Waiting. So maybe the real question isn't about power's purpose, Jake continued, warming to his theme in the way he did when he was just talking, not trying to sound smart. Maybe it's about the person. What are they trying to do? Are they building something, protecting something? Or are they just swinging the hammer around because it makes them feel strong? He glanced at the spear in his hands. This thing chose me. I still don't know why, but I know I didn't ask for it. I didn't seek power. It just happened. So I guess my answer is, power doesn't have a true purpose. It's just power. What matters is whether you're the kind of person who deserves to use it responsibly. Silence. Jake was pretty sure he'd just failed spectacularly. That answer wasn't poetic. It wasn't philosophical. It was just common sense from a guy who'd learned the hard way that tools could be used well or poorly. The sphere turned green. What? Jake and Zorax said simultaneously, though with very different emotional inflections. The human passes, Velena confirmed. His answer demonstrates understanding of responsibility over ambition. Wisdom is not always found in complexity. The trials continued. Zorax's answer was all about strength and domination. Red, failure. Thunderfist's response was thoughtful but overly abstract. Red. By the end, only Jake, Swiftblade, and Captain Steelheart had passed the wisdom trial. This is ridiculous, Zorax snarled. The third trial will prove the truth. Combat was luck. Wisdom was... I don't know what that was. But courage? True courage in the face of mortal terror? The human will fail. Jake was inclined to agree with him. The third trial took place in yet another arena, this one smaller and darker. The 7 warriors stood in a line. Before them, a doorway opened onto what looked like pure darkness, not the absence of light, but darkness as a thing unto itself. The trial of courage, Thumek announced. He'd taken over from Velena for this one, his military bearing perfectly suited to the grim atmosphere. Beyond this doorway lies your deepest fear, made manifest, not an illusion, not a trick. The doorway reads your mind and creates a real, tangible threat drawn from your nightmares. Face it, overcome it, prove your courage. Or die, Zorax added helpfully. Yes, Thumak confirmed, or die. These trials were designed for legendary warriors. They are not safe, they are not fair. They are tests of worthiness, and worthiness demands risk. Can I just forfeit? Jake asked. I feel like forfeiting would be the smart move here. You may forfeit your life by refusing to enter, Thumak said. The doorway has activated. It will not close until all warriors have faced their trial or died attempting. Of course it won't, Jake muttered. Zorax went first, naturally. He strode into the darkness without hesitation. The doorway showed a glimpse of what waited inside. Another version of himself, twisted and corrupted. The sound of clashing blades echoed out. Then silence. Then Zorax emerged, bleeding but victorious. One by one, the warriors entered. Captain Steelheart faced a reality where she'd lost her sentience, reduced to a mindless machine. Swiftblade confronted the ghost of warriors she'd failed to save. Each emerged changed, shaken, but alive. Then it was Jake's turn. He approached the doorway slowly, the champion's spear humming in his hands. The darkness seemed to writhe, eager to show him his fears. "Here goes nothing," Jake said, and stepped through. The darkness swallowed him. When his vision cleared, Jake stood in his studio apartment. Not the fancy quarters the council had given him. His real apartment. The one with the leak in the ceiling and the broken air conditioning and the overdue bills stacked on the counter. He was alone. The spear was gone. His phone showed a text from his supervisor. "Terminated for job abandonment." Another text, this one from his landlord. "Eviction notice filed." His bank account, 4367. His mother's last message, unread for 3 months. "Are you okay, honey? You haven't called." This was his fear, not monsters or death or physical pain. But this. Being back where he'd been 6 months ago, alone, broke, directionless, a 32-year-old maintenance worker with nothing to show for his life but a string of failures and disappointments. The apartment door opened. A figure stepped in. Jake recognized himself, but older, grayer, more tired, future Jake. "This is where you end up," future Jake said. "You know that, right? This prophecy nonsense, this chosen one bullshit, it's not real. You're going to fail the trials. You're going to go back to your real life. And it's going to be this, forever. The same apartment, the same dead-end jobs, the same crushing mediocrity." "Maybe," Jake said quietly. "Maybe that's true. So why keep trying? Why not just give up now? Forfeit. Walk away. At least you'll have the story about the time you almost became a champion. Better than nothing." Jake looked around his apartment, at his life, at what he'd been running from when he'd taken the job with the Galactic Council, a chance to get off Earth, to do something different, to maybe be someone other than Jake Murphy who never quite made it. "Because giving up is definitely failure," Jake said. "At least trying gives me a chance." "A chance at what?" Future Jake laughed bitterly. "You're not special. The spear is broken. This is all a mistake." "Yeah, probably." Jake felt something in his hand, looked down. The champion's spear was back, vibrating softly against his palm. When had it returned? "But you know what? I've been failing at things my entire life. I'm really good at failing. And the one thing I learned from all that failing is that you do not actually die from it. You just keep going, try something else, fail better next time." Future Jake flickered. The apartment started to fade at the edges. "The spear chose me," Jake continued, speaking to himself as much as to his fear. "Maybe it made a mistake. Maybe it's broken, but it chose me as I am. A guy who cleans toilets and lives in a shitty apartment and has no idea what he's doing. And you know what? If that's who I am, then that's who's going to carry this spear. Not some legendary warrior, not some chosen hero from prophecy, just me, Jake Murphy, in all my aggressively average glory." The apartment dissolved completely. Jake stood in darkness again, but this time it felt different. Not oppressive, just empty, waiting. "I'm not brave," Jake said to the void. "I'm terrified, but I'm going to walk forward anyway because that's all I know how to do. Keep moving, keep trying, fail forward." Light blazed. Jake shielded his eyes. When he lowered his arm, he was back in the arena. The other warriors stared at him in shock. He's glowing," Swiftblade whispered. Jake looked down. The champion's spear was blazing with light, brighter than ever before, and that light was spreading, running up his arms, surrounding him in a cocoon of energy. The spear sang. Not just vibrated, actually sang. A sound like crystal bells and thunder combined. The runes along its length flared in sequence, and Jake felt something shift inside him. Not power exactly, more like recognition. Like the spear was finally seeing him clearly, and he was seeing it. "Trial 3 complete," Thumak announced, his voice tinged with something that might have been respect. "Jake Murphy has passed all 3 trials. By ancient law and tradition, he is deemed worthy of the title, Champion." The crowd erupted. Jake stood there glowing, confused, and more than a little overwhelmed. Can someone turn off the glowy thing? He asked. It's really distracting. The light faded. The spear returned to its normal state. But something had changed. Jake could feel it. The spear wasn't just responding to him anymore. It was part of him, like an extra limb he'd never known he was missing. This is bullshit! Zorax snarled, but even he sounded less certain now. This is destiny, Krelian said, his 3 eyes shining with tears of joy. This is... Velena paused, her lights pulsing in complex patterns. Oh no. What? Jake asked. What's oh no? Velena's lights turned red. Every alarm in the arena began blaring simultaneously. The trials, she said urgently. They weren't just tests. They were a key. The champion's spear at full power acts as a beacon. A beacon for what? Thumak demanded. The arena ceiling exploded. No, not exploded. Something tore through it. Something vast and dark and wrong. Jake's mind struggled to process what he was seeing because it wasn't supposed to exist in normal space. It was a tear in reality itself, and through that tear poured darkness that moved with terrible purpose. Void entity, Velena said, her voice tight with fear. The trials awakened it. The spear's power called to it across dimensions. This is what the champions were meant to fight. The entity descended into the arena. Civilians screamed and ran. Warriors who'd seemed so confident moments ago froze in terror. Jake watched as Zorax, the veteran warrior who'd called him weak, simply collapsed to his knees, his weapons falling from nerveless hands. The entity radiated fear like heat from a flame. Not natural fear. Something deeper. Existential. The terror of looking into the void and realizing it was looking back. Jake should have been terrified. By any reasonable standard, he should have been a gibbering mess on the floor. But instead, he felt annoyed, he said aloud. The champion's spear blazed in response. Really annoyed, actually. Jake started walking toward the entity. You know, I've had the worst day. I touched your stupid spear, got kidnapped by space aliens, forced to fight in trials I never wanted, faced my deepest fears, which, by the way, was really not cool. And just when I think maybe I can go back to my normal life, you show up and start terrorizing people? The entity turned its attention to him. Jake felt its presence pressing against his mind, trying to inflict the same paralyzing fear it had used on everyone else. Yeah, no, Jake said. I literally just faced the fear of dying alone as a failure. You're going to have to try harder than vague cosmic dread. He was running now, the spear light in his hands. The entity lashed out with appendages of living darkness. Jake dodged, barely, and realized the spear was guiding him, showing him where to move, when to strike. It was like the Gravikan fight, but bigger. More. The spear and Jake weren't separate anymore. They were working together, each complementing the other's weaknesses. You want to know why the spear chose me? Jake shouted, ducking under a wave of darkness that dissolved 3 arena seats. Because I'm too stupid to know when to quit. Because I've been such a failure at everything that cosmic horror doesn't even register anymore. My student loans are scarier than you. He thrust the spear forward. It connected with the entity's core, or what passed for a core in something that barely had geometry. Light exploded outward, and the entity shrieked in what might have been pain or surprise or both. And you know what the worst part is? Jake pressed his advantage, striking again and again, each blow driving the entity back. I was supposed to get hazard pay for cleaning that display case, but did I get it? No. Because you assholes interrupted my shift. The entity tried to retreat, pulling back toward the tear in reality. But Jake was beyond reason now, months of frustration, of being overlooked and underestimated, of being told he wasn't good enough. It all came pouring out. I'm tired of shit just happening to me. Another strike. The entity recoiled. I'm tired of being dragged into other people's drama. I'm tired of prophecies and trials and cosmic whatever. I just wanted to clean floors. One final thrust. The champion's spear blazed with light so bright it hurt to look at. The entity screamed, a sound that existed across multiple dimensions, and then it was gone. The tear in reality sealed shut. Silence fell across the arena. Jake stood there, breathing hard, the spear still glowing in his hands. He said into the quiet. Is it dead? Banished, Velena confirmed, Her lights were pulsing erratically, shock and awe mixing in her bioluminescence. Sent back to the void spaces. You actually did it. The prophecy, Krelian whispered. It was true. All of it. Thumak walked up to Jake, his expression unreadable. Then the general saluted, a crisp, formal gesture of respect. I was wrong about you, human. You are a champion. Perhaps not the one we expected, but the one we needed. Cool, Jake said. Then his legs gave out and he sat down hard on the arena floor. Can I have that hazard pay now? The ceremony was everything Jake had feared it would be. They'd rebuilt the arena ceiling, apparently that happened a lot in galactic politics, and filled it with representatives from 1,000 worlds. Everyone wanted to meet the new champion, to shake his hand, to have their photo taken with the guy who'd punched a void entity in its metaphorical face while complaining about student loans. Jake sat on a throne that was somehow even more uncomfortable than it looked, wearing ceremonial robes over his maintenance uniform. He'd refused to take it off, the champion's spear leaning against his shoulder like a friend who'd had too much to drink. And so, Krelian announced to the assembled masses, his voice amplified across the chamber, we officially recognize Jake Murphy, human of Earth, as the champion of the spear, guardian against the void, and defender of the 17 systems. Applause thundered. Jake waved weakly. As champion, Krelian continued, Jake Murphy will take his place among the council. He will lead our military forces. He will serve as an example to all species of what it means to be worthy. He will... No, Jake said. The applause cut off. Krelian's crest feathers drooped. I'm sorry? I said no. Jake stood up, the spear coming with him like it was magnetically attached. I'm not doing any of that. But... The prophecy said I'd wield the spear. That's it. Nothing about joining councils or leading armies or being an example. Jake gestured at himself. Look at me. I'm wearing a jumpsuit to a state ceremony. I ate a granola bar during the opening speech because nobody told me when lunch was. I'm the opposite of leader material. Jake, Velena said gently, floating closer, you defeated a void entity. You passed trials designed for legendary warriors. You cannot simply walk away from destiny. Watch me. Jake started toward the exit. Security guards moved to block him, but one look from the glowing spear made them reconsider. Here's what's going to happen. I'm keeping the spear. You cannot! Krelian protested. It must be kept in the Hall of Eternal Glory. In my apartment, Jake continued, where I can actually reach it if another cosmic horror shows up. Because apparently that's a thing now. But I'm not joining your council. I'm not leading armies. I'm not doing ceremonies or public appearances or whatever else you had planned. Then what will you do? Thumak asked. My job, Jake said simply. I'm a maintenance worker. That's what I'm good at. That's what I'm doing. You're going to clean floors? Krelian's voice rose in pitch. You're the champion of the spear and you want to clean floors? I want to do my job, get paid, and not deal with cosmic destiny bullshit unless absolutely necessary. Jake paused at the door. But if another void entity shows up, or if the spear starts glowing weird, or if you really need someone to punch incomprehensible evil in its stupid face, yeah, that's part of the job now, I guess. This is highly irregular, Krelian said weakly. The human has a point, Thumak interjected. He did save us all. The least we can do is respect his wishes. Plus, Jake added, I want a raise, a big one, and hazard pay, retroactive to when I first touched the spear. How much? Velena asked, her lights pulsing with what might have been amusement. Triple my current salary, plus full medical and dental, and Fridays off. The council members looked at each other. Whispered conversations rippled through the assembly. This is blackmail, Krelian said. This is negotiation, Jake corrected. I have a magic spear and I saved your asses. Pay me. More whispering. Finally, Velena floated forward. Very well. Your terms are accepted, Champion Murphy. You may remain in your current position, with the understanding that you will answer the call if the need arises. And the raise? Approved. And Fridays off? Approved. And you'll stop calling me champion? That, Krelian said stiffly, is non-negotiable. You are the champion whether you like it or not. Fine, but only in official documents. Day to day I'm just Jake. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and one more thing. The prophecy thing, where you said I was chosen from smallness and would walk unnoticed. That was basically saying you needed someone ordinary, right? Someone who wasn't too invested in all your warrior culture and prophecy nonsense? I suppose that is one interpretation, Velena admitted. Right, so maybe next time you're looking for a chosen one, start by asking the janitors. We know where all the bodies are buried, metaphorically speaking, and we're usually too tired to care about glory or destiny or any of that crap. Jake hefted the spear. Now if you'll excuse me, I have a shift in an hour and I need to find somewhere to store this thing. He left the chamber to stunned silence. Behind him, he heard Krelian say weakly, Did we just get negotiated into submission by our own champion? Yes, Thumak said, and Jake could hear the smile in the general's voice. Yes, we did. I believe, Velena added, that is why the spear chose him. 3 months later, Jake Murphy reported for his normal maintenance shift. The raise had cleared his student loans and let him upgrade to a 1-bedroom apartment. The hazard pay had bought him a decent used car. Fridays off meant he actually had a social life again. The champion's spear leaned in the corner of his maintenance closet, next to the mops and industrial cleaner. It pulsed occasionally, keeping him company during long shifts. Quiet day? His supervisor asked, stopping by during rounds. Yeah, Jake said, wiping down a conference table. Pretty normal. The spear vibrated, once sharply. Jake and his supervisor both turned to look at it. The runes were starting to glow brighter. Is that... His supervisor started. Is that... His supervisor started. Probably nothing, Jake said quickly. It does that sometimes. False alarm. The spear's glow intensified. An alarm somewhere in the station began blaring. Jake's communicator beeped. Krelian's voice came through, panicked. Jake! Emergency! There's a... void entity? Jake guessed, already reaching for the spear. How did you... Lucky guess. Jake grabbed the spear, which immediately blazed with light, clearly excited about getting back to work. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes. But your shift, it's Friday, it's Thursday, close enough. Jake started jogging toward the chamber where, sure enough, another tier in reality was forming. You know what? Add this to my overtime, and I want combat pay. Jake, you can't just... I literally have the magic destiny spear. I can do whatever I want. He arrived at the chamber where council members were running in circles and another void entity was trying to eat reality. The spear sang in his hands, ready for round 2. Hi, Jake said to the entity. I'm on my lunch break, let's make this quick. The entity roared. Jake sighed, the spear glowed. And in his maintenance closet, next to the mops and cleaning supplies, a small sign had appeared. Someone, probably Velena, had put it there during the night. It read, Office of the Champion, please knock before entering. Janitor at work.